All right, so here okay. So I'm here to talk about Brock Lesnar's loss to Cain Velasquez. What does it mean for Brock and the UFC? What I want to do first is let's take a look at Brock's MMA career leading up to the Cain fight. He comes into the UFC from the WWE. Everybody knows him because he's a popular guy. He's a 2000 heavyweight NCAA wrestling champ. So he's got a good pedigree. Wrestlers seem to do really well coming into the UFC. So Brock comes in. His first fight's Frank Mir. Frank Mir is a big guy, 6'3", 255. Former UFC heavyweight champion. He's a submission specialist. He's got decent stand-up. Doesn't have a good chin, but he's a good fighter. I don't think he's been the same since his motorcycle accident. But that being said, Brock comes in, totally destroys him the first round, picks him up. Frank Mir doesn't have an answer for this beast. So right away we're thinking, God, this Brock Lesnar, he's for real. But we haven't really seen any stand-up from the guy. He's basically just picking people up and throwing them down. So Frank Mir, the second round, gets him in a knee bar. And, Brock Lesnar being green and not really being an MMA fighter yet, just basically still being a wrestler, nearly beats Frank Mir but gets caught in the knee bar. But what it did is it legitimized Brock Lesnar for being in the UFC and a contender. So then his next fight, they pair him up a few months later with Heath Herring. Heath Herring, another big guy, 6'4", 250, comes in pretty good shape. He's got, 40 fights to his credit, fought in, all the big names in Pride. So, he's no slouch. So what happens? He goes 3 rounds with Heath Herring, totally dominates him, takes him down at least 6 or 7 times, keeps him on the ground, and basically makes him look like an amateur. So at that point, I was kind of like, okay, this Brock Lesnar's for real. Starting to really become a fan of Brock. I think his antics were a little bit questionable, but as a fighter, I really dug that someone with limited experience like Brock Lesnar could come in and start to dominate people like that. Okay, so he beats Heath Herring, and people are starting to say, hey, this guy's a force. His next fight, he goes back and fights Frank Mir again. This time, he totally dominates Mir. Did get a little bit of a knee to the face, but shook it off and basically manhandled Frank Mir again. So now he's 2-1 in the UFC, and people are saying this guy's going to be the next champ. I think his next fight was Randy Couture. Everyone knows Randy's story. He needs no introduction. The guy's world class. Yeah, he's older, but he's beaten guys half his age. So he fights Randy Couture. Randy Couture kind of hangs with him a little bit in the first round, I think from sheer experience. But then, Brock basically overpowers him, hits him kind of on the top of the head. Randy goes down and, end of story. So now people are going, okay, you know what? Now he's the champ. Who's going to beat this guy? The guy comes in, 6'3", 6'4", 280 pounds probably on fight day. Got a physique that's just, it's intimidating. His wrestling's off the chain. Then he comes in, in comes Shane Carwin, the guy that's going to, basically prove to everybody that Brock's not as good as everybody thinks. Well, he comes out, and what happens? He devastates Brock with a nice uppercut. Brock gets pummeled, basically would have lost the fight, but he got saved by the bell. My jaw was like wide open going, holy crap, this Shane Carwin's for real. Next round, Brock comes out, takes Carwin down. Yeah, Carwin was tired, but hey, you got to pace yourself. Chokes him out. So I was like, damn, who's going to beat this guy? Now, one thing that we did learn from the Shane Carwin fight is Brock Lesnar really doesn't have any stand-up. He might be able to, hit a little bit himself, but he's got absolutely no defense for stand-up for someone who's good with their hands. So I think what happened was Cain Velasquez's camp, Cain's got good hands. I don't think he has great hands. I think he has really good hands. He's got great wrestling. I think his camp was perfect. When I watched that fight, Cain Velasquez, obviously, the two things they trained most was stand-up, and when you get taken down, you get up as fast as you can. The last thing you want is almost 300 pounds on top of you. So Cain comes out. Brock comes out ferociously, takes him down twice, but Cain got right back up. Cain goes in and, bop, 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 and Lesnar just basically crumbles under the storm of someone with heavy hands, and so it was interesting to watch this beast just basically go into the fetal position. So here's the deal. So Brock Lesnar looked pretty bad, I would say, and don't get me wrong, I love Brock. I'd say he was probably my as far as heavyweights go, I would say he's my favorite fighter. I love watching the guy. But we all seen from the last fight that he's got a lot to learn. He's still green in MMA. So what does this loss mean for Lesnar? I think it means a couple things. One, obviously, he needs to train on his stand-up. I mean, he needs to learn how to defend himself when someone's pushing the pace in the stand-up. Brock is big and strong. Those are his strengths. So he's probably not going to find someone that's going to manhandle him. What he is going to find, and what we saw in the Carwin fight and the Kane fight, is someone who has a lot better stand-up than him. So Brock needs to deal with that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think, for one, if he's serious about his career in the UFC, he needs to train at a serious camp where there are more well-rounded fighters. His wrestling is sound, and everyone knows that's his bread and butter. So Brock needs to focus on his stand-up and his defense in the stand-up. He seems to have a big problem with getting hit. He seems like he gets disoriented really quick, and instead of bobbing and weaving and getting out of the way of the punches, he seems to lose focus and go right into the fetal position. I hate saying that, but that's what he does. Brock, if you're watching this, dude, I love you, man. I want you to come back and prove to the world that you can overcome adversity. But it's going to be really interesting to see whether Brock makes the necessary adjustments to come back and regain his title, or if he comes back at all. Like I said, Brock, work on that stand-up, man. Just every day, get some really good stand-up guys around you, and get that, because that's what you need to train for, because everything else is there. Love to see you come back. I'd love to see a fight between you and Kane again. But you know what? You need to take the next 6 months and really reevaluate your camp. I'm sure you got some great guys there, but from the looks of the videos that I've been watching, most of your guys are wrestlers. So, it's just like when Mark Coleman came into the UFC about 12, 13 years ago. He was killing everybody, big, strong wrestler, but people started to figure out ways to beat him. And so you need to, evolve with the sport. And I think if Brock does that, I don't think anybody can beat him if he takes a year to work on those things. And, just his size, his strength, and getting better at the stand-up, submissions, and the whole game as a whole. Brock Lesnar's still a force to be reckoned with. I'd like to see him come back and regain his title. Taking nothing away from Cain Velasquez, the guy's a juggernaut. But I do think Brock Lesnar has a better base to start from. Anyway, what do you guys think?